Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Dr. Ced Sez. I am Dr. Cedric Wood and I will be talking about current events and blending it a little bit with psychological concepts. What just happened the day before yesterday? Terrible tragedy in Minneapolis. A school shooter showed up and started shooting into the chapel, not the classroom, but the chapel where children were. Unbelievable. And in the future, I'm going to be showing you the shape of the brain, and I'm going to be showing holes in the brain where things like caring and consideration and thinking about others is empty. Those spaces were empty in his brain. The parts of his brain that had to do with anger and hurt and pain and trauma were inflated, huge, and pushing out any kind of kindness or consideration for the needs of others. Because if he'd had any kind of kindness and needs of others, he would not have gone and bought guns, bought the bullets, and then walked up and started firing. He wouldn't. But his otherism. We don't have a word. We have altruism, and that's just doing something nice to somebody. But we need a word, and I'm going to offer the word altruism. Alteri, spelled just like the English word alter with an I, is the Latin word for other. So altruism, that's easy to say, means I care about the other person. The opposite of that is egocentrism. And that is how we all are to a certain degree. And so we should all stop and think, where do I fall on the scale from 1 to 10? Let's put 10 as a person who's totally personality disordered, full of themselves, sociopathic, certainly egopathic. A 1 is somebody who is altruistic. I care about others. I'm going to put myself second. The little boy that jumped on top of the other one and to shield him was putting the other boy first, and then he got shot in the back. I pray that he's going to be okay. He's in the hospital. But 2 little girls, no, 1 girl and 1 boy lost their life. You just can't imagine the heartache of parents sending their child to school at a Christian school and then discovering later that they'd been shot and killed. They didn't, stumble and fall and hit their head and accident and suffer. No, somebody intentionally pointed a gun and pulled the trigger. Totally unnecessary, shocking, heartbreaking. So on Hannity last night, interesting, they were talking about, Senator Smith, I believe, I guess, from the great state of Minnesota, was really coming down on people in general who were saying thoughts and prayers toward you. We don't need thoughts and prayers. What good does that do? And really kind of denigrating the idea of being a Christian and showing that you care. And so that was totally inappropriate. Now I'm going to drop down out of my parent and drop into my adult and say, I get where you were coming from. You want action. You want feet on the ground doing something about it. Well, at the end of the program tonight, I'm going to be telling you what we should be doing. Now, who's we? We is the American Psychological Association, the American Psychiatric Association, who said just a couple of years ago, well, there's no way we can pinpoint who's going to do it. That is beside the point. We are all school administrators, superintendents, every senator, every representative, and the president. We all have something we can do, and we're not doing it by and large. I'll cover that later. Now back to Hannity. Hannity wasn't the host. He had a person named Jason Shevitz who sat in for him, and he did a good job. But he and his guests went all the way over to one side of the issue, and that is doing what? Slipping up into the nurturing parent, critical parent, or maybe egopathic parent, depending on how angry you got. Well, Senator Smith got right up in here Thank goodness the Chaffetz and his guest stayed down. In other words, this up here is super angry and hurtful, cuss words, calling names. Down here is gently saying, maybe you could do something different. And that's what they did, but they were still in their parent because they were saying, how dare these people say that sending out thoughts and prayers is useless. That is a kind and caring thing for people to do. But they stopped there, saying that this was a good thing to do. What they should have done is said, now we understand. That's the adult ego state. From your point of view, you want action. And they could have said, we want action too. We're in favor of action. The problem is Senator Smith's action was control the guns. Guns kill people. Well, that they do. And so there are controls that we can do. My suggestion is that nobody 25 years old or younger can buy a gun, especially an assault rifle, without somebody 30 years old or older go with them and say, this is a nice young man. Our family is a group of hunters. We like to go out and hunt. And he hasn't had any problems growing up. Well, I don't think this young man that did the shooting could have found an adult that would have gone with him to a gun shop and said that. So if my idea was in place, he couldn't have gotten a gun legally. Okay? So I believe that action should take place. So I wish that the Hannity people had said, this is what we can do. And what do I wish they would have said? They would have said, let's get mental health into the schools of America. How do we do that? Well, one way is to have mental health testing. So that was online. If you go and look at it, there's 2 states in the United States that have gone ahead and said, we have mental health testing in our school system. 2. What about the other 48? Well, Colorado passed a law in 2023 that said, yes, let's do testing in our schools. But in 2025, they put forth a bill that said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. Oh, what is so hard about reaching for mental health for all the young people? Well, they said, it infringes on the rights of parents. Okay, I can imagine what that means, but my gut response, my parent response is, how can that infringe? How can giving a child mental health infringe on the rights of parents? There are some parents that are evil and they don't want their children to be healthy. Ooh, no. Of course, that's not it. But from a mental health professional's point of view like mine, it seems like that. You know what it is? It's so many parents are very much in their parent ego state. We will be in control. Being in the parent mode, that's what I call it now. The parent mode is power, and it's power, control, and domination. And the D can also stand for defensiveness. And it can also stand for punitiveness. I'm going to get you. I'm going to teach you. I'm going to stop you. I'm going to tell you. But the other part of the parent mode is when someone says, well, maybe we should do this, or maybe you should do this. That defensiveness. No, that's wrong. I never did that, or I won't do that. And you see this every day. All around you in society, you see people responding in that way. It's really amazing how rampant egocentrism is. And then as you talk and interact, it's called interacting in transactional analysis from the parent ego state. So I want to encourage you to go see a therapist or read a book, maybe this one, I'm okay, you're okay. Do you see the 3 circles? Parent, adult, child. Yes, the adult is the pretty blue circle. and your relationship with your spouses, your friends, your siblings, your parents will be much better. Who else will your relationship be better with? Your children. And now they're talking online about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. saying, well, maybe there's antidepressants involved. That might have been part of what's going on. Yes, that's very possible. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Let's go down that road. But it still boggles my mind that people at this day and age, after 135 years of psychology since 1890, we're still scratching our head. What would cause a young man to do this? Billions, I want to say, of research projects in journals all over the world talking about childhood trauma and what it leads to when the child grows up. Mental health professionals are exceedingly well versed in this. Let me see if I can point it. I've got this over here on my shelf, and it has to do with polyvagal theory, right? Yeah, got it right there. And that's just one of the many ways of approaching childhood trauma. How do you deal with childhood trauma? Does childhood trauma lead to shooting little children and then yourself? Absolutely 100%. So why are we sitting here? Should we look at guns and control guns, or should we look at antidepressants? Both have their place in the whole program, but at the heart of the program is mental health. And at the heart of mental health is your relationship with your mom and dad. How's your relation? How was this young man's relationship with his mom and dad? We haven't heard one word from either one of them. The hiking trail stabber in Arkansas a few weeks ago, I mean, he was angry. He's looking into the camera. A teacher here in the North Texas area, and then I guess he got a job in Arkansas, and he was so angry, so upset, that he went and got a knife and killed those two parents right in front of their little children. And then we had all the news this summer from Brian Kohberger. The name should be Kohlberger. Kohl is cabbage in German. I don't know where they dropped the L out of their name. But we saw that over and over again, and saw footage of the crime scene where he went and stabbed and killed those 4 innocent young people with their whole lives ahead of them. Horrifying. And all the time, the news people, the motivation is yet to be learned. Why would Brian Kohberger go and instill these? We hope that the motivation will come out. And they say that in every one. And I'm going to say this after everyone. We know the motivation. There may be some retribution in there, like the pretty girls didn't like Brian Kohberger, so this was a revenge thing. But mostly it's a thing that comes to a certain degree from genetics, probably, but not always. But that's got to be part of it. But then the genetics start happening when they're 5 and 10 and 15, and mom and dad don't notice that something's going on weird. I think his 2 sisters did. Both of them became mental health professionals, noticed something, and they didn't go and see Dr. Wood for family therapy or any other family therapist that could help those 5 people talk about what's going on. Well, what do you see Brian doing? Brian, what's in your mind? And talking melts away that hardened space in the back of his brain that said, kill somebody, especially a girl, kill somebody. There was a conversation that came out after the trial was ended. He was convicted, will be in prison for the rest of his life, that he was talking to somebody, and they were talking about school shootings or stabbings, and he said, well, maybe it's a one-time, one-off kind of thing. You know, somebody might do that, and then they would never do it again. What's the subtext below that? I might do that someday, but I'm just going to do it one time. I'm just going to get it out of my system, and then I'm going to be good to go. And hopefully I won't be caught, and I'll live the rest of my life. Mind-blowing. unbelievable that the person did not have none of these three people and all the other shooters had any altruism. Do we need that word? We need the where's your altruism? That concern and care about the other person. Now, I know some of you are saying we do have a word. It's called empathy. Okay, so empathy is kind of what you feel for somebody, but altruism is how you're thinking about what are the needs of the other person. They go together and they create emotional intelligence. You can't see it, but Daniel Goleman's book is right over there on my little table, Emotional Intelligence. And all the school shooters, EQ went to 0 when they put on that mask and pulled out the knife or pulled out the gun and started shooting. Don't we want to stop this? Okay, American Psychological Association, get more involved in getting the word out that we need to have mental health testing in every school, and tell the politicians, don't go and pass a bill 2 years later and saying, no, it's too disrespectful of the parents. How? We're trying to save their children's emotional life and maybe even their physical life, because this young man that did the shooting the other day is dead. His parents will never see him again. It's interesting that he just broke up with a romantic interest. And what did that have to do? Well, it had to do with not having the love that you needed growing up. And so you find the love in a romantic partner, and then when they say, no, I don't think so, goodbye, you're devastated. You're brokenhearted. You break down and start having desperate thoughts, and sometimes homicidal thoughts, and very often suicidal thoughts. But those will dissolve when the young man or woman sit down with a family therapist and have open discussion, conversation with mom and dad, and maybe the siblings, and maybe with an aunt or a grandmother or something like that. I just don't understand. My theme, my motto is family therapy works. As you talk about it, it's just like putting some heat below a mass of wax. It'll just melt. That wax will just melt away. The hard, hurt feelings will melt away with what? As the therapist teaches, healthy communication. Okay? Does that sound good? Call me at 214-394-4040 and let me know what you think. Let me know if you're willing to put your name and your email address on my list of people who are in favor of a class in every high school teaching mental health, well-being, healthy relationships, healthy parenting, and healthy communication. I want to teach everybody these skills. Won't you support me in that? Call me, write me a letter, whatever. I'm right here in Dallas, Texas. This is Dr. Cedric Wood. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good weekend and stay safe as always. Bye for now.